Why do you want to reduce your sodium? Because you don't want to end up hypertensive. Sodium is a vasoconstrictor. When you vasoconstrict the arteries, you have to increase blood pressure to pump blood through them. And hypertension over time, it's like a #1 risk factor for having a stroke, for having a myocardial infarction, dramatically increases your risk of becoming demented, going into kidney failure, all these bad things you don't want. You're going to hear things like, oh, low salt diet, 2,000 milligrams or less. That's bogus, okay? If the normal proper intake is 200 milligrams a day, 2,000 milligrams a day is 10 times too much. You know, I think you should try to at least be under 500 milligrams a day. Sodium is a vasoconstrictor because it leads to inhibition of endothelial cell, the lining of arteries. They're nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator. So the other thing is, when sodium is elevated, it has a reciprocal relationship, like a seesaw, with potassium. K+ is for potassium, Na+ is the symbol for sodium. So when you're increasing your dietary sodium intake, you're actually going to end up having more of that sodium taken in by your body. You're going to be having a relative loss of potassium. Every cell in your body has to maintain sodium and potassium gradients. And when you elevate the sodium, they're the two most common cations, positive ions intracellularly. And when you're increasing sodium, you're reducing potassium, and that messes up the cell's ability to maintain good sodium-potassium gradients across its plasma membrane. It does so with a sodium-potassium ATPase pump. That means an ATP energy-powered pump in the plasma cell membrane to pump out 3 molecules of sodium and take in 2 molecules of potassium. That maintains a slight negative charge within the center of the cell. And that cellular gradient, both of a chemical gradient and of an electrical gradient, is used by the cell for other types of pumps. The cell uses that to run its calcium membrane pump exchange system. It uses that to maintain its hydrogen proton exchange system across the plasma cell membrane. So what I'm trying to say is, when your sodium intake is high, you don't just become hypertensive, you damage the gradients of every single cell in your body. You're making your body sick, you're screwing up your metabolism, and you're predisposing yourself to a lot of complications down the road. Other things to be aware of, we talked about fructose causing increased sodium absorption in the gut, increased retention of sodium from the kidney. Another not well-known fact is when you have elevated insulin, associated with prediabetes, diabetes, when insulin is elevated, it causes increased retention of sodium by the kidneys, and that'll cause volume expansion of your blood volume, and that'll cause hypertension. So what's the point? Diabetes and hypertension go together, okay? So you don't want this. You want to minimize your intake of saturated fat to decrease your tendency towards developing insulin resistance and thereby decrease your risk of hypertension. The most common reason people end up on kidney failure, on hemodialysis, is because of diabetes and hypertension. And, you know, if you talk to a neurologist, I told you I got my 3 neurology friends, I ask them what's the most common cause of stroke. One says hypertension, the other one says diabetes, the other one says atrial fibrillation. They're all related to the same thing, atherosclerosis and problems like this of hypertension. Hypertension is the #1 risk factor for atherosclerosis. #1 cause of death is atherosclerosis in the heart, coronary artery disease, myocardial infarction. #2, cancer. #3, stroke, depending on how you look at the numbers. But the bottom line is you want to avoid all things. So what's my advice? Don't add any salt to your food. If you absolutely have to, put a little bit on after you've cooked it, then it's more noticeable. But keep it to a minimum. And yeah, you want to minimize your sodium intake. You'll be a lot healthier. Oh, actually, I want to show one last thing in case we didn't end yet. You look at this, the quinoa, 0 sodium. You look at this, oatmeal, 0 sodium and a bunch of potassium. You look at blueberries, 0 sodium and a bunch of potassium. So what's my point? P for plant foods, P for potassium. Unless you're in advanced kidney failure, you want to increase your potassium intake, reduce your sodium intake. You know what you could do? You could get one of those salt substitutes that has potassium in it and less sodium or no sodium in it. That'd be a reasonable thing to do. You always want to make sure you got iodine in your salt as well. But just be aware, sodium tends to be bad for you. And no animal besides modern crazy humans with their processed diet eats more sodium than potassium. It's a recipe for making yourself sick.